Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. This time we're taking a look at something pretty amazing, reasoning AI. It's really taken off recently, and I think for good reason. We're not just talking about, AI that can recognize patterns anymore. This is AI that can problem solve, like almost like having a supercharged brain working with you. And you sent over some research on DeepSeek's reasoning model R1, and that's exactly what we're going to unpack.
Sounds great.
Yeah. So to kind of get us started, maybe we can get a grasp on the fundamentals. So what exactly are these reasoning models? Like, how do they think?
Yeah, so it's helpful to think about it like this. Traditional AI is like, that really good student that can just ace any multiple choice test. They're great at recognizing those patterns. But reasoning models are more like the student who can write that really compelling essay, connecting ideas and drawing conclusions.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, so reasoning models are built on these things called large language models, or LLMs. And it's basically like giving the model access to like a massive library filled with books, code, all kinds of information.
So that's essentially what an LLM is, and it allows the AI to understand and generate human-like language. But reasoning models, they go a step further. They have these special mechanisms built in that allow them to truly reason.
Okay, so they have that knowledge from those LLMs. But what are those special mechanisms that actually let them reason? Can you give us some examples?
Absolutely. So one technique is called chain of thought prompting.
Okay.
And it's kind of like breaking down a complex problem into smaller, manageable steps, like outlining a project before diving in.
So it's not just jumping to an answer, it's actually like thinking through things.
Exactly. Another one is tree of thoughts prompting, where the model explores different lines of reasoning all at once. You can think of it like brainstorming solutions and then, weighing the pros and cons of each one.
So it's almost like having a debate in its own mind.
Yeah, precisely. And then there's self-consistency, where the model actually generates multiple reasoning paths, and then it chooses the most consistent answer.
So it's like double checking itself. Yeah, exactly like getting a second opinion.
That's clever.
Yeah. And then there's also something called neurosymbolic AI.
Okay.
And that might sound complicated, but it's really fascinating. It's like combining the intuition of a detective with the logical thinking of a scientist. So essentially what neurosymbolic AI does is it combines the pattern recognition strengths of those neural networks with the logical rules of symbolic reasoning. And that allows the AI to understand the world in a much deeper way.
Wow, that's really giving the AI both like a powerful brain and a set of tools for logic and reasoning.
Exactly. And that leads to some pretty incredible capabilities. Now, you're interested in DeepSeek R1, but I do want to mention that it's not alone. There's this whole field of reasoning models out there, each with their own strengths and approaches.
Yeah, it sounds like a race to create the most powerful AI. What are some of the top contenders in that space?
Well, OpenAI's GPT-4 is considered the current leader. What's really impressive about it is its ability to create new programs in real time to solve those problems it's never even seen before. It's like having this AI programmer on call.
Wow, that's incredible. But I'm guessing that level of power probably comes with a hefty price tag.
You're right, GPT-4 is very expensive to use, although there are some rumors of a more affordable version in the works. But that actually brings us to another major player, DeepSeek R1. And this one's really unique because it actually learns reasoning from scratch using something called reinforcement learning.
Okay.
So instead of being spoon-fed tons of examples, it's more like figuring out a puzzle, by trying different approaches and learning from its mistakes.
So it's more of a learn by doing approach.
Yeah, exactly. And what's really interesting is DeepSeek R1 has proven to be really strong in coding and math. And importantly, it's also surprisingly efficient, which makes it more accessible than something like GPT-4.
So it's a bit of an underdog, but with some serious potential.
Absolutely. Then there's Google's Gemini 2.0, based on something they call flash thinking.
Okay.
And it's designed to be multimodal, which means it can understand not just text, but images and speech.
So it has a more well-rounded understanding.
Exactly. And what's really cool is that Gemini 2.0 can actually show its reasoning process, so it's less of a black box.
So we can kind of peek behind the curtain and see how it's thinking.
Right.
Are there any other notable reasoning models we should know about?
Yeah, there are a couple of others. Claude 3.5 is known for being really good at dialogue, and QWQ is great at solving math and logic puzzles. But, the key takeaway here is that AI is becoming more and more capable of understanding different types of information and then using that information to solve problems.
Yeah.
Which brings us back to DeepSeek R1, the one you're really interested in.
Yes. Let's dive into that. What makes its reasoning so special? What sets it apart?
It has some really fascinating features that make it unique. Like we talked about, it learns through reinforcement learning or RL from scratch. Think of it like learning to ride a bike. You try, you fall, you adjust, and then eventually you figure it out. R1 does the same thing, but with these complex reasoning tasks.
So it's learning through experience rather than just memorizing rules.
Right. And it also goes through this really intense multi-stage training pipeline. You can imagine like a boot camp for AI. It starts with a basic set of reasoning examples and then moves on to more challenging tasks, constantly refining its skills.
So it's constantly being challenged and pushed to improve.
Exactly. And then there's its unique architecture, which is based on something called mixture of experts. Imagine having a team of specialists for different problems.
Yeah.
That's essentially what's happening inside R1. It has this huge network of these expert networks, but only a select few are activated for each specific query.
So it's like having a whole brain trust on call, ready to tackle whatever problem you throw at it.
Exactly. And through this unique training and architecture, R1 develops some really impressive behaviors that are almost human-like. For example, it can actually check its own work, like double-checking its math.
So it has its own internal quality control system.
Right. And it can also reflect on its reasoning process, refining its conclusions based on a deeper level of understanding. And get this, it can actually generate detailed, step-by-step explanations of its thought process, making its reasoning transparent.
So it's not just giving an answer, it's showing its work.
Exactly. And here's another cool thing. Through something called distillation, its reasoning abilities can be transferred to smaller, more efficient models.
So it's like sharing its brain power with others.
Exactly. And this is huge because it makes the technology way more accessible. These smaller models can run on less powerful hardware, which opens up a ton of possibilities for how and where we can use R1.
Yeah, it's like taking this incredible reasoning ability and making it available to everyone.
Exactly. It's all about democratizing access.
So DeepSeek R1 is clearly built on some pretty impressive technology. Is there another model that it's based on? Like an earlier version or a foundation it builds upon?
Yeah, you're right. It didn't just appear out of thin air. R1 is built upon another impressive model, DeepSeek V3.
Okay, so what's the relationship between V3 and R1? How do they work together?
So DeepSeek V3 is already a powerhouse in its own right, known for being very efficient. And it excels at things like code generation, translation, and content creation. And it uses that same mixture of experts architecture.
So V3 is like the all-around athlete, and then R1 comes along and specializes.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. So R1 takes all the strengths of V3 and then really focuses on boosting its reasoning and problem-solving abilities. It goes through even more training with reinforcement learning, which hones its skills in logical thinking and decision-making.
So it's like V3 went back to school and got a PhD in logic and reasoning.
Exactly. And because of that specialized training, R1 really shines in tasks that require deep logical thought, like solving those complex math problems, debugging code, or providing those step-by-step explanations.
They really sound like a dynamic duo, each bringing their unique strengths to the table.
Precisely. So V3 provides that strong foundation, and then R1 builds upon that with its supercharged reasoning abilities, making them a pretty formidable pair.
Yeah.
Yeah, they really are a powerful combination.
This has been a fascinating look at the world of reasoning AI. I feel like I'm starting to get a real sense of what makes DeepSeek R1 so special.
It is a remarkable model.
But before we move on, can we take a step back and recap some of the key things we've learned about reasoning models in general, just to make sure it's all sinking in?
Of course. So the big takeaway is that reasoning models are like this huge step forward in AI. They're not just about, recognizing patterns anymore. They can actually understand context, draw conclusions, and solve those complex problems, much like humans do.
It's like they're taking all that knowledge from the LLMs and actually putting it to work.
Exactly. And they do this using some really clever techniques, like chain of thought prompting, where they break down problems into smaller steps, and tree of thoughts prompting, where they're exploring different lines of reasoning at the same time.
And don't forget self-consistency, where they're double-checking their own work.
Right. It's like they have this built-in quality control system making sure they're on the right track. And then there's neurosymbolic AI, which combines the strengths of neural networks and symbolic reasoning.
It's like giving the AI both a brain and a set of logical tools.
Exactly. And of course, we can't forget about reinforcement learning, which is how DeepSeek R1 learns from scratch.
It's that learn-by-doing approach that makes it so adaptable.
Right. It's constantly experimenting, learning from its mistakes, and just getting better over time.
And then there's that mixture of experts architecture,
Yeah.
which allows R1 to be both efficient and incredibly adaptable.
It's like having a team of specialists on call, ready to tackle any problem.
We've covered a lot of ground here, and it's clear that DeepSeek R1 is really pushing the boundaries of what AI can do.
It really is, and what's so exciting is this is just the beginning. This field is moving so fast. Who knows what amazing things to see in the near future.
It's a bit mind-boggling to think about all the possibilities that are opening up.
It is, and it's a really exciting time to be following this field.
I'm sure our listener is just as fascinated by all of this as I am. But before we wrap up, I have one final question. So we've talked about, how DeepSeek R1 can reason like a human, solve complex problems, and even learn from its mistakes. But what does this all really mean for, us, the average person? How is this going to change our lives?
That's a big question, isn't it? The truth is we're still kind of figuring that out.
Yeah.
But the potential is just enormous. Imagine, a world where AI can work with scientists to develop new life-saving drugs.
Yeah.
Or help doctors diagnose diseases, earlier and more accurately.
It's like having a team of super intelligent assistants working alongside us in every field.
Exactly. And it's not just those highly specialized fields. Think about how reasoning AI could personalize education.
Right.
Tailoring lessons to each student's needs and learning style, or help us design smarter cities.
Wow.
Optimize transportation and conserve energy.
It sounds like it could touch almost every aspect of our lives.
It really could, and that's both exciting and a bit daunting. We need to make sure that we're developing and using this technology responsibly.
Yeah.
But if we do it right, reasoning AI has the power to solve some of the world's most pressing problems and create a better future for everyone.
It's a lot to think about, but it's also incredibly inspiring. It really sounds like we're on the verge of a real technological revolution.
We are, and it's really up to all of us to shape how this revolution unfolds.
Well said. Well, it's been amazing exploring the world of reasoning AI with you today, and I know our listener is walking away with a much deeper understanding of this incredible technology. Thanks so much for sharing your expertise.
It's been my pleasure.
And to our listener, we hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of reasoning AI. It's a field that's constantly evolving, so stay curious, keep exploring. And who knows, maybe you'll be the one developing the next groundbreaking AI innovation. Until next time, keep diving deep.